Welcome to the Wonder Women's Collective podcast. I'm your host, Gracie Hins, and today I am chatting with Rachel, the founder of Kāma mats, which are based out of Tahoe, California. It was so fun getting to hear the inspiration behind the mat and just her journey as a small business owner. We also chat a little bit about our vans. We both have Delicas, which are just a very unique van, and are often maintenance prone. So yeah, we just chat about everything in life, and it was super fun to hear her story. So I hope that you enjoy this episode.
Well, first of all, do you want to just open up and say a little bit about who you are and what you spend your time doing?
Yeah, sure. Um, so my name's Rachel, and I'm the founder of Kāma. We build origami style surfaces for everything outdoors, indoors, wherever you like. And yeah, I love the outdoors. That's like been a huge driver of mine. I love skiing, snowboarding, mountain biking, surfing. I love being outside with people I love and camping and just going on adventures that leave you fulfilled to the brim at the end of the day. And yeah, I live up in Truckee, and we make the mats. Actually, you said you're from Salt Lake. I'm currently manufacturing like in Logan,
Okay.
which has been fun to like go up there and um, yeah, spent some time in Salt Lake and in that area. Yeah, it's definitely been a journey with the mats. It started as like a project for outdoor yoga. I was in school studying landscape architecture and doing like my final thesis project, and I really wanted to do like an outdoor yoga um, like kind of pop-up studio experience.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, that sort of just like transitioned through a lot of like design iteration and, folding paper and fabric and experimenting with different materials. And that just kind of turned into a mat that's like interconnected and origami. So it's super portable. But yeah, a lot of like iterations kind of made that first prototype, and the first one was like super bulky and kind of falling apart, but it got the point across. And yeah, I remember the first day that like I finished sewing it and like took it out to like a little spot and slow and did some yoga with some friends, and I was like, whoa, this is cool, I made this. um and then yeah, fast forward like several years, I kind of just like put the mat on the back burner and went to a 9 to 5 and like got it caught up in all that, moved to Tahoe, and then did some traveling. And like kind of on my travels there's like a few moments where I'm like, I really need to like go back and do the mat. And like so many people were like, you need to do the mat, you need to do the mat, and I was like, I need to do the mat. So yeah, I started just like reaching out to manufacturers kind of all over, and I eventually found some awesome folks in Baja at first that were willing to kind of like take it on and make some prototypes. So I was like kind of mid COVID, like driving from Tahoe down to Ensenada, like back and forth, like every month. And it was
Wow.
like it was actually a great way to like, itch that like travel bug that like you couldn't really fly anywhere at the time. So it was nice to like be able to drive into Mexico and yeah, get that done. And yeah, it was wild. So they made mats for me for 2.5, 3 years. And then yeah, kind of got like tired of bringing materials in and out and back to the States. And so started looking for a little bit more local stateside manufacturing.
Hmm.
And then yeah, found my gal Adrian in Logan, and she's got a small team of awesome folks that do our manufacturing now, and they're great. So
Perfect.
yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Yeah, it's been really fun. Like I love going to events and pop-ups and just like meeting people in person, showing them the mat, like oftentimes doing a yoga class or some sort of like picnic pop-up, or yeah, whatever works like with
Hmm.
with the event. And Yeah, bringing it like with the van has been so fun. I got the Delica last February, so it's still like brand new to me pretty much. Um, and that's been like fun. It pairs really well with the mats, and it's so helpful. Like just being able to shove a bunch of mats and then hit the road. And
So when you first started making, when you like first made the mat, it was for school. Yeah. And then were you like still using it when you were transitioned to more of the 9 to 5?
yeah, kind of. Actually, I had a friend who was like living on a farm at the time, and she borrowed it from me, and she was just using it like every day as like just like it was her. She was like living out of a van or something, and it was her space, and like I was so happy that she was like using it all the time, and she was like, she was the main one. You got to do this, Matt. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's so genius. Like I need more of these. And still to this day, she lives down in Australia now, but she's like my biggest fan and like just loves she has a sauna business now and is actually using them as like little sauna, like outdoor mats, like in front of the sauna, like in between the sauna and the cold plunge kind of thing. Um, but yeah, that's like, that was one of the things I was like, okay, I gotta do it. But yeah, I didn't really I only had that single prototype um, up until Baja. Like I found the manufacturers in Baja, and I'll never forget like the day that um, like I arrived and they had a couple samples, and I'd never seen more than one. I'd like drawn them up to like fit together, but I'd never seen more than one. And so seeing like a couple mats like put together, I was like, that's really cool.
It's so cool. And it's so
Yeah.
cool to see like your work just like in front of you too. How did you get connected with the people in Baja?
I've used this. Have you heard of Upwork? It's like a
Yes,
really great,
I think so.
like, yeah, freelancing kind of. It's kind of like worldwide Craigslist. It's kind of it's an awesome tool. I forget, someone suggested it to me, but yeah, you get on there and you can find anyone that's gonna like redo your resume to like, yeah, any sort of. It's great for manufacturing. Like it's global. And yeah, basically what you can do is like just write up a little like job description, and it'll kind of automatically connect you like using keywords and stuff
Hmm.
to people. It'll suggest people, and then you can like invite them, but you can also just put it out to the public. I've used it a couple times for stuff, and it's so useful, like so helpful as like a kind of like solo business person, but like you can really expand like your offering with that. So I found a guy down there that was like so nice, and he like went out into Ensenada and kind of went and talked to different shops and manufacturers, and showed them like my drawings and stuff, and then yeah, we landed on these guys, Costa Bea, and they were so wonderful to work with for a couple of years.
You were saying this was kind of like all during COVID that you started to like pick this back up.
Yes, absolutely. It was
Yeah.
like the heart of COVID. But it was a great time. I feel like it was a really expansive, like exciting time for me. Like 2020 was honestly a great year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it gave me a lot of purpose, like trying to solve like this kind of just building a mat. And um yeah, it was like March, I don't know, kind of, I guess, like all of 2020. January of 2020 was like when I like officially started, you know, put in the put in like the LLC papers and whatnot. But then I didn't really start selling mats until August of 2021. So it took some time to like get them a little more dialed, and yeah, figure out all the shipping stuff and the website and everything. But it was cool to launch, and like I'll never forget the day you like press go on your website. You're like, okay, hopefully people buy mats. But yeah, it's been good. It's so cool to follow your own dream, and and like make that work in however you need to do it. It's amazing when I get photos of people like, oh yeah, I saw this person with a mat like out here like in the middle of nowhere, and like that's so cool.
That is so
uh,
cool. What was the job that you were working before starting this?
yeah, so I actually, because I studied landscape architecture and I've always like loved building stuff. I'm like currently like renovating my house right now. I worked like in construction as like a project manager. So I was
Okay.
doing like kind of like mid to like high end residential in Tahoe. And um yeah, it was a good job. Like the company I worked for was like so supportive. Like they really like helped me like transition out to finally like being with doing Kāma full time, but I was like still working for them a little bit. Got to pay the bills.
Mhm.
But yeah, it just, like I would be at my desk and I'd be like, like I really like just, want to break out of this because like at the end of the day, you're just, like building houses for like, second, third homes for these really wealthy people. I'm like, like it kind of tore at my soul a little bit. But I definitely like learned so much, and I don't think I could be where I am without like having that experience and like going through the process of like, like you're making good money, but it's really not like your life's purpose, and like going through that journey. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's cool.
What was kind of the moment? I know you're saying with the friend who now lives in Australia, of just being like number one supporter, but like what really was it that you were like, okay, I just need to do it.
Yeah, there was, I think, just having a lot of conversations with like people, honestly, most of the time, like complete strangers. While I traveled solo and like kind of worked abroad for like a full year prior to kind of coming back. And just, yeah, having a couple conversations. Like, um, I I sailed across the Pacific. That was kind of like a kickoff to my travel. And one of my like crewmates, like you just talk to people, you get really, really deep when you're out in the middle of the ocean with people. And yeah, he was just like super like he hadn't like didn't see the mat at all, but he knew. He was like, this is cool, like you should definitely follow this path. And like a lot of like, I think my brain just kind of like something switched on like during that year of traveling and just talking to people and trying to like figure out like how to make it work. And yeah, I think I met also a lot of people during that time that were kind of like nomadic and also like were pursuing their own like ventures. And I feel like I was like, yeah, introduced to like several really cool female business owners. I was like, oh, that's like really what I want to do. And yeah, there's definitely the turning point though. I could like go back in some journals and probably read about it. But yeah, it's definitely like a way of thinking. And also I still remember those days being like at my desk, like being like, okay, this is not like, I need to like kind of break free from this. And I just knew that that was like at my core. So yeah,
Yeah.
like however it needs to happen.
hmm Okay, I totally want to hear more about this year of travel and sailing across the Pacific. Yeah, yeah, I want to hear that whole
Yes. Okay, so this is in 2019. I kind of grew up sailing and like teaching sailing like at summer camps and whatnot. And I just kind of had this dream of like doing a Pacific crossing.
Mhm.
Um and yeah, I was like 26 at the time, like no mortgage, no business, nothing. Like I had my job, and I'd saved up money from that, but I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna kind of like do this trip and like see where it goes. And yeah, so do some internet searching, and there's a website called findacrew.net. It's like slightly creepy. Like you got to kind of like sort through the like 65-year-old men that are like messaging you all the time. But yeah, I found a small boat, like 36-foot boat, and these two guys that are surfers. And I was like, okay, they're like, early 30s, like they seem chill. I can like just hear my mom's voice and like, spoiler, it all worked out. But yeah, so they were leaving from Puerto Vallarta and like going to Tahiti, wanted to surf along the way, needed an extra crewmate. And I was like, okay, this sounds great.
That
Like,
sounds so
I'm
sick.
in. Yeah. And so all I had to do was just, yeah, book a one-way ticket down there. And they met me at the airport. And yeah, one guy was Australian, one guy was from the UK. Nice guys. And yeah, we spent like, or I spent, they had already been like kind of prepping the boat, but spent probably another week and a half, 2 weeks, like kind of in the marina, just doing preparations and yeah, getting to know the boat. And I was like, wow, this is like really happening. And yeah, we set sail in like April of 2019. And yeah, 26 days to the Marquesas, which is like the first island chain you hit.
Okay.
And it was just like every like feeling you could ever have, like nearly being struck by lightning like several times. You're like, wow, I just
Oh my
escaped death
gosh.
again.
Yeah.
But some of the night sailing was like actually probably the biggest surprise for me, like how you just start like being aware of like where the stars are at every night, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I can like, the thing is with sailing across the ocean, you're like not worried really about hitting anything, and you're just kind of like pointing it straight unless there's like some weather or something you're trying to avoid. But it was pretty like, we didn't have any, there was no like self-steering, so one of us was constantly steering. So
Okay.
it was a like a 3 hour on, 6 hour off shift.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of those six shifts was like a sleeping shift. So yeah, you're definitely like a little tired sometimes, but you get down for your sleep shift and you're just, I remember just being out like a light, like I slept really well. um and then yeah, we hit, yeah, like a couple days of weird weather, but nothing crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like some of the days were like the bluest water you've ever seen, like dolphins breaching the bow, and it's the ocean. It's like bioluminescence. It's so magical out there.
Mm-hmm.
I miss it a lot. But actually, that's kind of where I got the name, or I heard the word Kāma out there, was that crewmate. You just like share music, and he had like there was a song that came up that was like, it was like, oh, this is such a cool song, like what's the title? And then it was like Kāma, like, oh, that's like the coolest word, I love it. And so when I got to land, I looked up like kind of the meaning. And yeah, I read like a blog post that was like, oh yeah, Kāma is like the feeling of feelings. Like, oh my gosh, like I've just felt every feeling under the sun. And yeah, I was like, oh, that word like stuck with me like my whole travels from there on out. I was like, oh, Kāma, like I don't, and I at that point I didn't even like connect it to the maths really. I was just like, I think this is like gonna be my business, like whatever it turns out to be,
Mm-hmm.
like Kāma, like I love that. And yeah, I love the geometry of it. It's a cool word.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah,
That's where
it's
that
so
came
cool how
from.
those things just like strike.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
did. But yeah, so we landed in the Marquesas, and then yeah, I spent a little time there. That's like a wild, that was like such a trip. Like,
Okay, wait, where
first
are
of all,
those
like
at? are those like, I'm trying to think, like south of,
South Pacific. So yeah, like below the equator. It's like if you look up the Marquesas, it's kind of like, yeah, south
Because it's
west
before
of
Tahiti.
Hawaii, before Tahiti. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we still had, I think it took us about 10 more days to get to Tahiti from the Marquesas. Um, but it was crazy, like, yeah, arriving there. It's a French colony, so everyone's speaking French. There's like
Mm.
baguettes, but also like it's wild. You're like, what is going on? Oh, and then you also sail through on the way to Tahiti, you stop in the Tuamotus, which is like it's like this atoll chain, and you if you look up like a satellite image of those, you just see like rings of sand, and that's like really what it is. Like you
Mhm.
sail through these little passes, which are like awesome for snorkeling, and like
Mhm.
you just like there's so many fish, but then you like end up in this like island of sand. uh but yeah, that was really cool. And then yeah, we the captain of the boat, he had bought the boat in San Francisco actually, and then was just trying to like sail it back to Australia. So he ended up leaving the boat in Tahiti, and then he was going to go get it at a later time. So we kind of all parted ways in Tahiti, and then yeah, I went on to spend some time in Indonesia and
Mhm.
just surfing there, and yeah, kind of expanding my mind a little bit. Just yeah, and I got to a point there where I was like running around Bali, and I was just like I at this point I was like kind of like had the the mat idea back in my head. I was like, oh, maybe like Bali could be like a good option for manufacturing. And I
Yeah.
sort of like went around. I was like, I don't think so. Like it was a little tricky, and
Mhm.
I'm like, this doesn't seem realistic. So I kind of dropped that idea and just like went and surfed for a little bit. Went down to South America after that and worked at a lodge down in Patagonia and like taught yoga and did some guiding down there. And at that point, I had no money. So I was like, I needed to work a bit. And then, yeah, and then COVID hit. And then I was like, okay, I'm I'm gonna go back and make these mats happen. And yeah, flew back kind of like mid-March um of 2020, and then yeah, landed like back in my old job kind of,
Mhm.
um and just kind of started figuring out the mats.
Yeah. And that
So
was
yeah.
all you flew back to Tahoe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because where
Yeah,
did you
my
grow
parents
up?
are San Francisco. So actually, yeah,
Okay.
flew back into San Francisco, but then ended up, yeah, driving back up to Tahoe and getting my old room back with my roommates. They had just like kept it as a guest room, and I was like, "Can I move back in?" They're like, "Sure." And then yeah, started kind of like driving down to Baja a bunch and that figuring out the mats kind of in between working and whatnot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How did you kind of end up in Tahoe too? Because I mean, it seems like
Um,
you have such a fondness of the water.
yeah, I know I miss the water so much. It's definitely a trade-off. But yeah, I love the mountains. I after yeah, graduating from SLO, I was dating a guy that was working as a firefighter up in Truckee. So I kind of followed him up here, and then yeah, just we actually broke up shortly after I moved up. But I stuck around, and yeah, I I love our community up here. It's so much fun. We have, yeah,
Yeah.
some amazing friends.
And the
Yeah,
Sierras are
and it
just so epic.
yeah, and I like picked up mountain biking, and I just kind of have found ways to like yeah, kind of quench that thirst for surfing. I will say that like snowboarding does like kind of like take the place of surfing, because it's yeah, it's just fluid, and you get that feeling like you're dropping into a wave every time you make a turn, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, but every time I can like get down to the coast, I'm always bringing a board, and it's always hard like you're starting from zero. You're like, oh, I used to be so much better at this. Why is it so hard? It's funny, is I like recently just kind of like got the itch to like sail again. I'm like, oh, I really want to go again.
Mhm. Yeah, it
I'm
just,
like, now
yeah,
I have
it
all these
sounds so lovely.
commitments. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's so freeing and so there's nothing like it.
Hmm.
We I went out to our friend's cabin this summer and like uh they had like a sunfish. I don't know if you know it's like a tiny little like two-person like single sail like little kids boat basically.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
they had one like under their deck and like they're like, oh, we haven't taken like we like never used like none of them knew how to use it or like raise the sail or whatever. I was like, you guys, like let me teach you. And I took them out. I was like, this is they were having the best time. I was like,
Hmm.
now you've got this all ready to go. They were so hyped.
So with now running your own business, what do you
Yeah.
feel like have been some of like the biggest hurdles that you've gotten had to get over, or like, I don't know, some of like the high highs and low lows?
Oh, the lows will be like a day when you have $65 in your bank account and you're like, oh my God, like I gotta sell some mats. Or like
Hmm.
just, you pretty much like put an order in for your mats and you're like, I just emptied that. Like, oh God.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, sometimes there's like those uncertain moments and then but then like so it's crazy how like the universe works. I swear it's like some like big order will come through and then like all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm gonna make it. Or yeah, you go to an event and you just like sell out completely and that's like and you're like, oh my gosh, that's like crazy how that works. Um but yeah, I think it's like just trusting the process and also like trying not to compare yourself like to other maybe other businesses or like other entrepreneurs that you're like that you're following or that you've like met and because like your business is going to go like at your pace and I think it's just yeah kind of like learning through that like having mentors that kind of like you can reach out to and be like hey like
Hmm.
I have a question about this or like how do you do this or what do you I don't know what are you filing for this or like yeah or especially like when I don't know I feel like I don't really have like I don't come from like a product design background so
Hmm.
I'll have a lot of questions for like oh like how do you do this seam or like you know I don't just like material questions and finding people that like are like more knowledgeable than you in that and that's that's awesome. Uh, like so many days just figuring out like how you're gonna plan your day and like how to make the best of it because when it comes down to it, it's like you're your own boss and sometimes like that is amazing. Sometimes like you're like, I have so much freedom. And then other days you're like, oh my gosh, like either I have so much to do or I have so much to do and I just don't know where to start. And sometimes that's like really difficult. Like I don't even know. um but yeah, I think like I love the podcast, like how I built this. I think it just like shows like it reaffirms that like there is no right way to run a business and like successful businesses like have come from every person every like disposition every like different brain working like um and I think like what really matters is just like your energy that you put into it and like your outlook and if you can stay positive through the tough times like likely it's going to be okay and yeah but it's tough there's no shortage of days when you're like oh should I be doing this or should I go back to my 9 to 5 and then I just like and then I'm like Rachel just like think about yourself like at that desk like you said you'd never want to do this again
Yeah. Well, it seems like you guys have done like you've done a cool job incorporating like the community side of it as well, of like doing events and like getting plugged in. And has a lot of that been more like in Tahoe, California, or has it kind of expanded elsewhere?
It's kind of expanded a little bit. Yeah, I definitely do like more of like small local events around here because they're just like they're right in the backyard. But one of the kind of like right after we launched, I went to have you heard of Rome Fest? It's like a
In
women's
Bend.
mountain bike festival. No, it's actually out in Fruta, Colorado, and then they used to do one in
Okay.
Sedona. They
Okay.
don't anymore. But that was like kind of like, a month or so after I launched, and it was like such an affirmation of like, okay, this is why I'm running the business. Like, I love being around people that are stoked. Like I
Yeah.
love the event setting when there's like a bunch of different vendors and you get to like know everyone really well and like create those connections um and then yeah, people that like are at the event just like come in and like hang out at your booth um and really get to like know the product rather than just like seeing it online and being like, oh, that's cool. Like I love that so much, like having that personal connection. And people will come back to me like I had this lady like this this holiday. She reached out. She was like, I have been thinking about this like for 2 years since I saw you last, and I'm finally ready.
Oh
So
my
like
gosh,
to buy
that's
a
so
mat.
cute.
I'm like, oh my gosh, you really like
Yeah.
uh, but anyway, stuff like that just happens, and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like, it's a really fulfilling place to be. So yeah, so and but that's like definitely one thing that I've learned. Like, you'll see an event, and you're like, oh, like how did like where do you sign up? Like all these things. Like, how do you get involved in these events? And really, it's so much like planning on the back end. Like you got to like reach out to the organizer, a year almost ahead,
Oh,
or
wow.
like, and then once you're in, you're kind of like, oh, you're on their list, and you'll get invited back
Yeah.
probably. Um, uh, and then yeah, so it goes from there. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of like looking at your calendar, 9 months in advance, and being like, okay, this is like where we're gonna fit in these events, and um, yeah, important or including the Delica in the events now has been like so fun.
Okay, so how did you get the idea of the Delica?
Oh, well, actually, this going back to Rome Fest and being next to cool vendors. Let's see, a year like so yeah, like September of 2023. Um, I was at Rome, and um I showed up for like load in, and it all goes well, and the event organizer Sam is like, oh, like you might have a neighbor next to you, she's like running late, like apparently her van blew up on her, like we're hoping she can still make it. She like makes bike bags, she's super rad, you'll love her. Anyway, I like come to meet them like the next morning. They show up in a rental car, and they're like, oh my gosh, like so crazy, like our van blew up, and like we brought all our stuff, we got a rental car, like towed the van, all this stuff. Anyway, like have like an awesome event. They're so wonderful. And um like see them uh like 6 weeks later in Sedona at the next event. I'm like, hey, how's your van doing? Like, what's going on? I'm like, oh man, like it's not well. Like the engine's totally blown, and all this stuff. Like, and then I got home from Rome, and my partner like is out. Like, we're dealing with our kid. Like all these, really tragic personal issues that like they can't like pay for the engine swap. And I'm like, well, like what van is it? Like, I'm just curious. Like, I've kind of been in the market. and they showed me a photo and they're like, it's a Delica, like it's so sick. And it's got like it's pretty like tricked out already. Like um the only thing it needs is in a new engine. I'm like,
Just a
oh
new
my
engine,
gosh,
no
like
problem.
just a new engine.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you've heard of like nomadic van
Okay,
life.
I was gonna ask because I love Rondo. So,
Rhonda, yeah. I was
yes,
just chatting with him actually earlier
I
this
was also
morning.
recently chatting with him. I call him all the
I
time.
love that. I know. I saw a Delica for sale down in Sacramento that like has needs like a bunch of work, but it's in good shape. And I sent it to him. I was like, "You guys need this?" Anyway, so yeah, so I she they put me in touch with Rondo and Gardner and luckily when the engine blew out, they had the Delica just like towed up there immediately. So it was
Okay.
already in Ketchum and she ended up selling the Delica to me for like $1,500.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, and then yeah, so I just had to do the engine, and then they did some like brake pads and radiator and stuff while they were in there.
Yeah.
And then I ended up picking up the van in February, and yeah, it's like love at first sight. I'm just like, what? This is so cool. Every time I drive it, it brings me so much joy. You're like, you're not going anywhere fast, but you are getting all the looks and making friends wherever you go. And it's so
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Yeah. No, it's so fun. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the basic Delica story. But I kind of love how it happened like so organically. And I was, I'd seen them like a little bit. I was like, what is that band? Like it's so cool. I didn't even really know what like the like hype and like the community around the Delica until kind of like they showed me that photo, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like what even like and then yeah, you get lost in like delicaforum.com and you're
Definitely.
sold.
Yep. Pretty much. Yeah.
Wait, what? So you still have yours, right?
Yes, I do. So I had been, well, it's kind of funny. So my sister, we both had Subaru Outbacks, and
Uh-huh. That's actually my
she,
other car.
yeah, no, so I still have my Subaru Outback too.
Yeah,
But
you got it.
yeah, I know. But it was funny. So her Subaru kind of like blew up on her, and then she was like, I really want to get a van and just like have something small because she was like, I'm not going to be sleeping in it all the time, but like it'd just be so sick. Like I've always wanted to get a van. So she got a little Ford Transit. And then I was just like pretty much kind of like living out of my Subaru for like a summer and fall. And I kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, like this is great. But it would be super epic if I could like sit up in bed. And then I was like, but I really want to like I don't want to just do a transit because I really want four-wheel drive. And then I like had a friend that like had actually no. So then I started looking and I was like, okay, like there's the Delica, like it's so cool, but it's like really old and like I don't know if I'm like ready for that. I don't know. And
Yeah.
then I had a friend that had like a really old, cute Tacoma. And I was like, you know what? I think I could definitely do the old car thing. And then I like started and then I was just like this like I was like and then at that point too, my Subaru had like kind of started having some issues and I like had to get the catalytic converter replaced. So like I had already kind of been in the mindset of like, okay, like maybe I should get a new car. And then I was like, you
Yeah.
know what? Why not just get an old car instead? And then I
Why
like
not?
and then I like went home to Seattle for Christmas and Seattle has like a bunch of Delicas with like the
Right,
imports and
right.
stuff. And so I like just kind of was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. Like I'm gonna find one. And so I like looked at a few in Seattle and then I know I want it built out, but like I don't, and like I'd love to do the build out, but like I was like, I just don't know how much time I have right now to do it. So if there was one that was
Totally.
built out, that would be cool. And then the ones that I saw in Seattle too, like they all had like leaks and seal issues. And then I like moved to Salt Lake and I was like, maybe I should just like look for one in Salt Lake. And I ended up finding this one in Salt Lake, but it had been getting a bunch of work done on it up in Sun Valley at Nomadic. And so it was really funny because I was like the first guy I was like the first person that reached out on Facebook like after it had been listed, and I was like, "Hi, like I'm super interested. This is perfect. Like this is exactly what I'm
Right.
looking for." And it was like all built out and everything. And he was like, "Okay, yeah, awesome. Like you seem like a great buyer. But it's in Sun Valley, and I have really good family friends in Sun Valley, and so I was like, okay, no problem.
Like perfect.
I'll just drive up to Sun Valley and like check out the van." And so I drove up to Sun Valley, and then kind of it was so funny because I was like, I technically bought it from like this guy in Salt Lake, but like Rhonda was like my main connection to it because I was like, hey,
Yeah.
like, do you think this is a good van to buy? And yeah, so I like went up and like test drove it up there, and then I ended up wanting to put like other tires on it or something. And so then I like went back to Salt Lake, and then I think I flew at some point, like flew to Sun Valley, and then like actually officially picked it up. And it was like I want to say it was like last February too. Like it was end of January that I looked at it, and then I was like, it's perfect. I want to buy it. And then, and
Oh,
then I actually ended up picking it up, I think, in February. But then it had a bunch of oil issues, and I
oh
like
no.
and so I like drove it back down to Salt Lake, and then I think I had been like traveling. Oh yeah, I like went and visited my sister in Italy in February at some point too. And then I like got
Nice.
back and like drove it around, and I was like, oh, I should check the oil. And then I was like, there's no oil on this dipstick. And so I was like,
Like, oh God.
hi Rondo, I think I have an oil issue.
Yeah.
And then I like drove it around Moab and just kept like dumping oil in it. And I was like, yeah, I think this is definitely like not like it's really bad. And so
Yeah.
then I like took it back up to Nomadic at the end of April, I think.
You're just
And
like
then
pouring oil in the whole time.
yeah, and then it was in Sun Valley from like April to like mid-July, I think. And it was like one of those things where Rhonda was like, yeah, and then I think it's got this issue. And I was like, oh great, like oh whatever. But I think all of that ended up getting sorted. And it's a gas. It's gas, it's not
Oh, it is a
diesel,
gas one.
which is kind
Okay.
of nice because I think
Yeah.
if stuff breaks, it's easier to fix. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Uh,
I in July picked it up and like drove it back to Seattle, and it's been doing pretty good ever since, except I think I got a bad tank of gas like a couple weeks
oh
when
no.
I was driving from Seattle to Salt Lake, and it was like at one point it just like kind of started stalling out, and I was like, that's new. I've never had that happen.
Oh God.
And then I like pulled over and it just like completely shut off. And it was like 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night.
That's
I'm like,
scary.
hi Rondo, so I'm on the side of the freeway. Do you want
Help
me to do
me.
what this could be? So basically, moral
Oh
of the
my
story,
God.
Rondo's the greatest mechanic ever. Yeah,
He is.
yeah,
Uh, so funny. Yeah. We were driving it back from Sun Valley, like after picking it up and like, 9 hours in, like getting back to Tahoe. And there's like this one like last like big climb like up from Reno
yeah,
to Truckee. And I like look out the window and the exhaust is like on it's been modified so you can see it. I'm like, oh my God, it's shooting flames. Like there are flames coming out. Like, oh my God. It's like, what the fuck? Like, oh God, okay. So, like, oh God, like that's not good. So Rondo actually ended up, he was like doing some travels and he ended up like his mom actually lives like near
yes,
Tahoe, like in Gardnerville.
right, right,
Yeah, and so he was like coming up to like visit her or something. He had some other like house calls he was making. And
yeah,
so we like brought it into like his friend's shop in Carson City and like he looked at it. He thought it was the turbo. They like replaced the turbo. It like happened again and then it ended up I think it was like the fueling was off, so it was like getting too much fuel. And so it seems to like so then he like talked me through it on like a FaceTime call and I haven't seen flames since. So
gosh, that's crazy though.
but yeah, I'll send you the video if I can.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
It
flames out of
was crazy.
exhaust
It
is
was
not a
like
good one. Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, like what? It was like
Yeah.
kind of cool, but also like a little
Also like a
scary.
little concerning at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, you also have like an Airbnb that you run, right? I
Yes.
saw that on your
I'm actually,
Instagram and I was like,
yeah,
that looks so cool.
I'm there right now. So that has been like uh kind of the like one of the main reasons like why I've been able to like do Kāma in the way that I can.
Hmm.
Um it's it's like a little cabin in yeah, it's north of Truckee by about an hour. Um in the zone called like the Lost Sierra. Um and it is, I walked into this spot and I'm like, this is the coolest house I've ever been into. It's basically like someone reconstructed like a barn inside of like a house. So like from the outside you can't really tell. It just looks kind of like a normal little cabin, but in the inside there's like 200-year-old timbers like all over. I actually met the guy. I'm in it right now. If you can kind of see,
Yeah.
there's like this big ladder and
Yeah, I
like
love
it's
it.
there's all this like mining stuff. It's cool. Um, but yeah, I got like it was just like in yeah, like extremely cheap. And I was like, I'm gonna make this work. I got a little help from my parents, which is like so generous. And I am like it, you know, like the Airbnb more than enough like covers the mortgage and then, you know, like gives me a little income to live. And it's been really fun like having like kind of being able to like use that side of like, you know, my construction experience and
Totally.
do work on it. And
Uh-huh.
like I just renovated one of the bathrooms like the last couple of weeks, which has been like exciting and kind of scary. You're like, like water lines and like, how do I fix this leak? Like YouTube has been a big help. But yeah, it's cool. It's interesting running an Airbnb. I don't think it's for everyone. I like have kind of, it's been like about 4 years now, so I've kind of like gotten over the like initial shock. Like, okay, like it's all gonna be fine. Like even if the guests are like not chill.
Mm-hmm. Not chill
But
in what sense?
oh, you know, I've had mostly like really good experiences, but you know, there are like the people that are like have have like questions about everything, or is like they're like running the heater at like 80 and then it stops working and you're in the middle of a snowstorm and like oh God, like shit's hitting the fan, but it's gonna be fine. It's just another guest, like
They'll be out
it'll
soon.
work out. Yeah, they'll be out soon. No, but that's not, I mean, yeah, that you only get a few of those like every year. Um, Mostly it's been a really positive experience. And yeah, it's been like fun just being like getting to know a different area of the Lost Sierra. And I've kind of like gotten involved with the like the trail stewardship out here, the people that build like all the trails and yeah, trying to like do some like, you know, work for them. And
Yeah.
yeah, the community out here is awesome. And it's just kind of like a little bit removed from Tahoe, so it's it's magical. Like there's like usually no one around, and you just have like, you know, millions of acres of wilderness to just explore and lakes and peaks to ski. And cool.
I know that just seems like such a cool, the Airbnb in particular, because it's like you don't have to live there full time. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like you're renovating and dealing with that side of things, but like it just seems like such a fun
Yeah.
way to like kind of have a space there and like
Totally. It's
cozy
a fun way to
surroundings.
like be creative and also yeah, you get like, you know, feedback and whatnot. And then yeah, it's funny because I actually yeah, I like rent a little house that's like, you know, 25 minutes from here. So it's not like you're close, but you're not like so close. So it still feels
Mhm.
kind of like a little retreat. And
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like this is kind of actually the more of like the quieter season. So like a nice time to like renovate and then also like I'll just, you know, do work from here, and that's really nice. Yeah, I think it's a great like way to like have some extra income. And like open your space to people, and like you can make it really intentional and kind of show them a really nice like experience and like appreciation for a new area, or an appreciation for the outdoors. Even like you get a lot of people coming up from the city, and they're like, oh, like your cabin like changed our outlook on everything, and we're so at peace now. And it's like I've hosted like a lot of also like retreats here, and I
Mhm.
love like when someone will reach out and they're like, hey, I'm gonna do like a women's retreat or a women's circle here, or like I'd love to do this, or like I love hearing that. um Funny story though, actually this spring we hosted a Levi's shoot. um
That's so
it,
fun.
yeah, a friend of a friend just like connected me with the production
Mm-hmm.
scout, and yeah, they ended up like having 50 people, and they shot like half of their like holiday campaign for this fall or this winter
Mm-hmm.
here, and it was like, whoa, it was so wild. They came in like they kept a lot of the furniture, but they brought in a lot of their stuff, and the set designer was this like wildly hilarious guy, and just like brought in like all this fun stuff, and the models were like so exotic. Like, what is going on? But yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something about a cozy cabin that just like where you can't like hear any, like you can only hear the river, or like,
Oh my
oh, right
gosh.
now I'm literally looking out at this, like I want to see if you can see it. There's
Yeah.
like just snow like
Oh my God.
falling like in the it's magical. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
kind of.
That's so cool.
It's like so pretty right now.
I know. No.
But yeah,
Like if
it's
I could just be
special.
a cabin
I'm
connoisseur like the rest of my life, like I would love to do that.
that sounds like an amazing profession. Sign me up.
Mhm. Yeah. Or just like little mountain huts, like mountain huts anywhere. Like I could just live in mountain huts forever.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, like the the huts in Europe are just like, oh my gosh, how like it's like they just know what's up.
No, they totally do. When you were in South America,
It's
did you
so
stay in
good.
any of those huts?
I did. So I such a funny like random story, but um I I had a really fun schedule when I was there. It was like 2 weeks on, 1 week off or something, or maybe it was 3 weeks.
Okay.
3 weeks. It must have been 3 weeks on.
Yeah.
No, maybe it was 2 weeks. I don't remember.
Something like
Anyway, so yeah, and the lodge was also like, it was a heli lodge, so you're just like constantly just like hopping in the helicopter and like flying with the guests like over here, and like they just drop you and you take a hike and make them a picnic and whatnot. It was just like wild. So
yeah.
anyway, they were doing something. It was like they're they were doing some the lodge operator also, they also do like work for the different little like tiny communities out there. They'll help with like bringing in, food, or like, I don't know, whatever. They'll move like materials or whatnot. So anyway, they were like doing a flight over to like the border between Chile and Argentina. And yeah, I kind of like got wind of this. I was like, oh, I really want to go like to Bariloche and like check out Frey and like all the huts over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, no problem. Like, just like come with us on this flight, and then we'll drop you at the border, and then we'll have a guy like bring you like to the road, and then you can just figure it out from there. I was like, that sounds great.
Like,
So I basically like went with them on this flight, and we like dropped off, I don't know what it was actually, at this community, and then they like basically just dropped me off at like a like Paso Garibaldi or something, like on the border, and this guy just shows up like right kind of, I was like, is he gonna come? He shows up in this boat, like takes me across this river, basically his little truck's like waiting at the end of the road. We hop in the truck, and he like takes me out to like the major highway. I think it's Route 40 in Argentina. And and I basically just like hitchhiked like to Bariloche,
Uh-huh.
and ended up like it was funny. He like the guy that ended up picking me up. I like saw him go by. I was like, oh, that's my guy. Like it was like a Sprinter van kind of thing. Like, and he had like a Dina Fit sticker on it or something. I was like, oh, he's a skier. Like that's cool. And like he's the guy. And but he like passed by me. I was like, dang it. And then he turned around and came and got me, picked me up, drove me all the way to Bariloche. Super nice guy. And then basically from Bariloche, I like hiked up into the hut system and spent some time at Frey up there. But that was really like the only hut I got to see. But I was there for like a week, which was
Gosh.
incredible.
Yeah, it looks incredible. I'm like, that's on my list of
Oh,
places to go.
yeah, so magical. I actually, so funny. I met someone there that was from Salt Lake. I think I only had like a climbing harness with me and my shoes, but he had like everything and like, took me out. We did a couple different climbs, like met some cool Australians there. They were down, like ended up doing like one of the big climbs there, which was so rad. Like I was like,
Hmm.
what? How is this happening? Like
Hmm.
this is magical. Um, and then yeah, it just ended up like taking a bus back like from Bariloche back to Puerto Montt, where kind of close by to where the lodge was, making me feel like traveling.
It's also like this time of year that I'm like, ooh, like what is the rest of the year gonna look like?
Yeah, totally. Where can I sneak in a trip?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and do you feel like with Kāma, do you kind of have a like not like set kind of calendar for the year, but like okay, like I need to be in the States this time of
Yeah,
year, like
yeah,
and with the
definitely. Yeah,
Airbnb too, I'm like it's kind of a lot that's like tying you to Tahoe area.
definitely. And it's gotten more like consistent as I've kind of like learned like the patterns of the year. It's actually this is like the low season right now. It's really
Mhm.
quiet, both with Kāma and with the Airbnb. It's like a good time to do house projects and renovations and whatnot. But yeah, I think like there's a couple little like lulls during the year, but everything starts picking up in March, and then it just kind of like full speed ahead until the holidays.
Mhm.
And then once the holidays hit, you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then like January 1st, you're like, ah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, do you feel like you have ways of kind of mitigating the stress around it?
yeah, I have just, you tell yourself like you just can't get too stressed. And then I'll just like, yeah, go ride my bike or go to yoga or, do something active. Like that's always like usually like the best medicine for stress. It's like just closing your laptop, just taking a break and yeah, going to hang out with friends or yeah, go for a ride and yeah, but you come back with a clear head and you're like, I got this. It's gonna be okay.
Have anything
Nice.
that you would like to leave people on today?
Oh, well, I would just say like I think the world like needs just like, more small makers. Like if you've got a little like passion project that you're fired up on, and it gives you joy, like just like share it. Like don't be afraid of sharing it. I think that's the hardest part sometimes is like putting it out there. And like, yeah, there's gotta be hard days and scary days, but it's I think like as long as you like follow your heart in that regard, like it's gonna be cool. And yeah, it's gonna be magical.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I hope that you're able to take something away from today. And if you haven't, you should definitely check out Kāma mats. It's just such a cool concept. They're so cute. You can do so much on them. And you can just make anywhere a fun little homey space. So, yeah, I hope that everybody has a wonderful day.